Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. My name is Gary Meades, and I am Library Services Manager for Northamptonshire Healthcare and Northampton General Hospital. And I'll be telling you the story of our virtual book club, how it came about, what we get up to, and what we get out of it. The library service's role traditionally has been very much focused on supporting staff with finding evidence, supporting education, training people on the use of databases and other resources. And all our stock was very much work focused, very much about healthcare decision making, education and patients. However, being librarians, a number of us found that we had rather too many books at home than we had space for. And so over time, thanks to donations from the team, we started to build a small leisure reading collection of fiction books. These proved quite popular, and a lot of staff were very keen to read things that weren't work-related. We received several donations from other people throughout the trusts, and slowly the collection began to grow. Then in late 2018, we were successful in winning a bid with the Northamptonshire Healthcare Charity to establish a much bigger collection of both fiction and non-fiction leisure reading titles. We started this off by going out to trust staff and asking them what they'd actually like to read, or if they had a book they would particularly like to pass on and recommend to others. We had a very enthusiastic response from people across both the trusts, and on the basis of their recommendations, as well as some select choices from the library team, we bought a large selection of fiction and non-fiction leisure reading titles for everyone to enjoy. We launched the collection in June 2019. It was really well received, lots of the books were borrowed, and we were really pleased that we were able to offer this additional service to support the well-being of staff across the organisations. But that was 2019, and at that point we had no idea what was coming the next year. I'd like to take you forward now to 2020. A new word was beginning to be on everyone's lips, and that was coronavirus. Like many others, the library service was forced to close its doors, and although we were busy as ever, we were all beginning to work from home. NHFT began to look at what it could do to support staff, to help with their well-being, and to try and overcome the isolation and disconnection that lockdown was imposing on many of them. I was approached by the head of learning and development to ask what the library service could do to help, and the suggestion was a virtual book club. We had all rapidly already become used to using Teams for meetings, and it seemed like the ideal tool to make it. Now, no one in my team had ever run a book club before, although some people had attended them. And this was completely new territory for a team who spent their time ferreting out high quality evidence from databases to support clinicians and managers. However, we're always up for a challenge. And being librarians, books are what we do. So the inaugural meeting of the NHFT Virtual Book Club took place in December 2020 via Teams. Our first book was recommended by our L&D colleague, and that was Lisa Jules' The Family Upstairs. It's a psychological thriller featuring an abandoned mansion, 3 entangled families, and a whole heap of dark secrets. It may have not been highbrow literature, but far more importantly, everybody enjoyed the book, and they spent that time in that first meeting talking about it. By the time we were halfway through the meeting, it became clear that the book club was a great way to join staff together. We had people from admin, we had nurses, we had AHPs, staff from lots of different backgrounds. And these were people who might not necessarily come across each other in a normal working day. And they all just met to talk books, but ended up creating connections between themselves. And laughing. Laughing is a really big theme in our meetings. The first meeting being a success, everyone decided they would like to carry on with the book club. And this time we went for Mr. Richard Osmond and his Thursday Murder Club, or crime. There's a theme developing. So a month later, we were all back together again, talking books, laughing, disagreeing about whether they liked it, and generally enjoying themselves. We also discovered fairly early on that we weren't always particularly good at staying on track as a group. And as we became more familiar with each other, sometimes these conversations veered wildly away from books. And we found ourselves a bit sidetracked, talking about all sorts of other things. So we talked about films, we talked about TV shows we liked, we talked about gym. And for some reason, lemon drizzle cake seemed to feature quite a lot in those early meetings as well. Sometimes our own stories have become the focus, and we've all learned a lot about each other. As the time rolled on, we expanded our reading, and we have covered lots of different authors and lots of different genres. Although I've tried to encourage other members of the group to pick books, it's usually me that decides what the group will read next. One of the main bits of feedback I regularly get is that group members really value being given something to read that they wouldn't normally have picked up. Of course, as a librarian, being forced to research and select a book from everyone to read was not exactly a hardship. More a perk of the job, really. Early on, as I began running the group, I did worry about picking books that no one else would like. But so far, I haven't picked anything that absolutely everybody hated. But I did come close with one book, which has become sort of a running joke in the group that seems to get mentioned at least once in nearly every meeting. Often at some point, people may be discussing the book and saying that they liked it or they only thought it was okay, and someone will quip, "At least it wasn't The Bastard from Istanbul." So what do we read? Well, as I mentioned earlier, crime is a big genre for our book group. Everybody seems to really like it. But we don't just read crime, we read lots of other things too. We've read some world fiction, we've read books from Japan and from Nigeria, and these give you a very different view on life, with different cultural perspectives coming into focus, which are really interesting. We read contemporary fiction, books set in near about the modern day, and we've read quite a few of those too. We've even read some fantasy and speculative or science fiction. Diane Cook's The New Wilderness was a particular favourite of mine, set in a kind of dystopia future where most of the wildlife and wildernesses in the world have disappeared. Not the most cheering, but very enjoyable nonetheless. And did I mention crime? We keep going back to crime. There are more crime thrillers out there than almost anything else, and the group do seem to really love them. So every so often, we'll return to yet another crime thriller, and everybody seems quite pleased about it too. We even read one book where the main character was a bee, the story was narrated by a bee. And as you can see, this was very much embraced by one of our book club members who came dressed as a bee, which was a big surprise to everybody. And you can see from the tweet at the front there, the author of the book, Leyline Paul, was actually pretty impressed too. So this is one of our more memorable moments from the book club. Another thing that's come as quite a surprise is how much authors are active Twitter users and prepared to engage with book groups and people who are their readership. We've had lots of tweets from authors of the books we've selected, sending us good wishes and sometimes trying to plug their work, which is completely fair enough, and also just hoping that we will enjoy what they've written. And this brings a whole new dimension, especially for me as a librarian. To have a connection with the author of the book that you've read and enjoyed is a little bit special, I feel, even if it is via Twitter. So, as this is a wellbeing festival, we need to talk about the fact that reading is actually really good for you, and this is borne out by research from the Reading Agency. A recent report noted that participation in shared reading groups, like our book club, is linked to all sorts of positive outcomes, including relaxation, quality of life, confidence, and shared feelings. Reading also enhances empathy. You understand other people's points of view. You can see different cultures and through different cultural lenses. And a recent online poll showed that regular readers are less stressed and less depressed than non-readers. And it's good for your mental health. It's also better than watching TV or scrolling through Twitter or Instagram or any of those sites too. And reading for pleasure is also associated with better sleeping. And that's not just if the book happens to be a bit dull. So, where are we now? Well, the book club has been going for quite a long time. We've read 25 books, had 25 meetings, spent well over 25 hours with each other. And that equates to over 8,300 pages read, if you've read all of the circles. It's hard to believe that from starting the book club in 2020, how far we've come, how much we've read, and how much we've enjoyed ourselves. Our next book, which we'll be meeting about in July, is actually about Madame Tussaud. It's a fictionalised biography, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. I think it'll be really interesting. Now, the meetings are attended in variable numbers. Sometimes we have quite a lot of people attend, sometimes only a few. But that's fine. We don't expect everybody to come to every meeting. People dip in and dip out. Sometimes people don't fancy the book we're going to read next, all that kind of thing. And all that is absolutely fine. We also have a few people who like to read alongside us. So they read the books that we pick for the book club, but they don't actually come to the meeting. Again, we're just really glad that we can share the titles and that they enjoy them. I think everybody who's attended the book club has got something out of it. Personally, I've really enjoyed the social aspects, but also swapping book recommendations with people and the tangible connections that we made between us since we started our meetings are highly, highly enjoyable. And I think this quote from Nicola, one of our members, sums up the pleasures of our book club quite nicely. That's the story of our book club. Thanks for taking the time to learn about it. I hope you found it interesting. If you'd like to know more, you can see there's a link here that will give you a list of all the books that we've read by our book club up to date. If you're interested in our leisure reading collections, you can see those on the library's catalogue. And again, there's a link here so that you can look through what we've got, both fiction and non-fiction titles. And of course, if you have any questions, you're welcome to contact us at the Berrywood Library. We'll be more than happy to talk about our book club and what's involved. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found this interesting, and I'll see you again.